Hello and welcome to another edition of the Crypto Club and Digital Assets Weekly Catch-up on Zoom. It is Sunday the 13th of April 2025, and as is always the case, we never quite know what we're going to be talking about. Really depends upon who comes along and joins us, but typically we talk about blockchains, cryptocurrencies, crypto tokens, DeFi's, NFTs, STOs, TGs, all sorts of three-letter terms and confusing phrases. But if you know what they mean, then do stick around because you'll really appreciate this session. If it's a bit of a blur to you and don't understand, then listen in and hopefully you'll learn a few things as well. We hold these sessions every Sunday evening, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. UK time. They're open to everybody, novices and experts alike. So if you've got any questions because you're on that learning journey, come on and join us in a future session. Or if you're running a project and you'd like to share details about it to a wider audience, then you can join in and take part in our Gone in 3 Minutes session, where you get 180 seconds to talk about your project or your idea. No slides, no PowerPoints, no demonstrations. Think of it as an extended elevator pitch. Hopefully you enjoy the session, get something out of it. Do click on the like, the subscribe, but even better, come along to a future session and join in with the conversation. So with that, let's see who's going to come and join us today. Annie, good afternoon or good evening to you.
Hello.
And Gabriella's just joined us as well. Hey, Gabriella.
Hi.
Hi. Hi, Gabriela.
I'm more attent about the US situation that it's not especially in Spain.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
So tell us more what you're seeing in the US at the moment. Then that's really interesting.
Trump tariffs and I think that this is the main topic.
It's certainly something that is having an impact in some way. I'm not sure whether it's the tariffs or what Trump is saying generally, because in the crypto world, he keeps kind of making interesting comments where he's very supportive of crypto and then it dies away and then he's not so supportive and then he is and this kind of thing. But yeah, it was interesting. I saw this article earlier on in Cointelegraph where it was talking about how there's a feeling that crypto markets could be starting to recover because of the Trump tariff announcements. But they've not really said why and what the link is, I don't think. But they have made some comments on this, exactly as you say about the possible impact. I'm kind of curious because I think he's using tariffs as a threat and a negotiating tool as opposed to an actual imposition. So we'll see where that goes. But yeah, so it's certainly adding to the uncertainty. And I did post something earlier about the fear and greed index as well, and how compared to last week, where we were with the fear and greed index, we're kind of out of that a little bit now. So I don't know, did I have the crypto markets? Let's see if we can pull this up just to share as well. So my default for this kind of thing is coin market cap, which is quite good. But if we take a look at the latest fear and greed index, I think last week when we were talking, it was quite low. It was just heading into the region of it was this second drop. In fact, I think the conversation we were having on last Sunday, we were kind of about here where the fear and greed index was 27 and dropping, and now it's back up to 32. So I don't know if you can see that on your screen. So typically when the fear and greed index is right down low, that's where you get people really worried and not investing and go for safe harbor. And then as it pulls out, it goes more into the greed side. That's where it tends to be more of a bull market and prices going up. But I wonder if the market's going to behave counterintuitively, and we might actually see the fear and greed index going up, but people still selling crypto for now. But we shall see. I don't know if either of you have got any thoughts or observations on that.
Is it not encouraging people to buy?
It certainly can be. That if I understand correctly, it's typically as the fear and greed index goes up, so people get greedier. It tends to be as they get greedier, that's a reflection of their willingness to buy. Um, but I don't know if it actually works out that way. I'm not convinced. I think at times crypto behaves quite differently to traditional markets, and it doesn't always behave rationally. So we'll see anyway. Hey, joined by Ken as well. Hey, Ken.
Yeah, hello, hi.
We're just talking about the movement on from last week's call, where the fear and greed index was down at 27, I think it was, and it was dropping. And it went into kind of like extreme fear area, and we've pulled out of that now, and it's back up to 32 and rising at the moment and heading towards the more greed end. So we're just commenting about where that might mean that the markets go,
Which
but no one really knows for sure.
which one was that for? The whole market?
Yes.
Because I remember during the bear market, the crypto fear and greed was basically hovering between 8 and 12 right through the bear market.
Oh, that was severely low then. Well, let's take a look. I guess there are
Because that was
there are various
during,
people who do it though.
sorry, I was going to say that was during the time of uh, what can I say, FTX and all that stuff was going on.
Ah, okay, so that's a bit longer ago then. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah, so
oh, mind you, let's have a look at all time.
that would have been about 2022, I think,
Yeah, I was thinking that
November.
unfortunately this doesn't go back that far. Well, I'm sure there are other indexes available. It's just that tends to be the one that I use because it's nice and easy.
Yeah, the coin market cap one. Yeah, even they were on. I mean, all over it was a very hard time, let's put it that way, when we had
Mm,
Celsius blow up, we had Luna situation blow up, and every week something was blowing up in
yep.
crypto, or somebody was getting arrested, one of the two.
Or any combination. The arrested one's interesting as well because one of the people who was arrested during that time was one of the developers behind Tornado Cash, one of the mixers.
Well, both of them. I thought
Mm.
both of them, the founders. I think they're still in jail in Netherlands, aren't they?
They may be, but this is where it gets interesting because if I remember correctly, there was a news item a couple of weeks ago that I think it was the SEC is. Oh no, it was whoever runs the sanctions screening. So it'll be the office of whatever it is now. I can't
OFAC.
remember. OFAC, that's all right. Yep. But I think they've taken Tornado Cash off the OFAC list.
Oh, what? So people can now go and draw their ETH back up now.
Well, potentially, but more interestingly, if Tornado Cash is no longer on the OFAC list, then there's potentially no reason for those people to be detained any longer. But I don't know where the story went with that, so I'm a little bit out of date on
Yeah,
it. So,
that's interesting. Yeah, probably
yeah,
right.
I think that was announced a couple of weeks ago. I'll go and dig that out and see if I can find the information on it. So, and I see Stuart's joined us as well. Good morning, Stuart's.
Yes, good afternoon to you, or good day, I guess.
Yeah, that's why I tend to just say hello to people these days. We're dealing with multinationals all over the world.
Yeah, I
Um,
just listened to what you were saying and got no idea it must be provincial news affecting the UK.
oh, I certainly wouldn't be surprised. The UK at times does behave differently. But have you got a perspective of the US view of things at the moment, particularly with Trump and the ever increasing uncertainty about what he's thinking around tariffs and crypto in particular?
We have some feedback on the crypto. It's evolving. There are several players that are obviously talking. But that's about all. We expect it to be about another 2 months.
Okay. So you think it's going to be something that there's not actually going to be anything um, concrete for a little while then?
Not for a couple of months, no.
Okay.
That's our feedback.
Okay. Okay. In that case, I will pop back to the thing we were just talking about as you were joining, which was about Tornado Cash. Because I thought this was quite an interesting news thing that was actually from a few weeks ago, I thought. And it was in fact, it was towards the end of March, so nearly a month ago now, that the Office of Foreign Asset Control, so OFAC, lifted sanctions on Tornado Cash because it was blacklisted for a while because it was felt it was being used for money laundering and so on. And it was just curious because they've lifted the sanctions, but there was also a couple of people who were the founders of Tornado Cash who had been detained. And I was just raising the point that if Tornado Cash is no longer on the OFAC list, does that mean that they'll be released in due course? Just a curiosity, right? So there we go. So anything else going on in the crypto world at the moment? Or is everyone just watching what's going on in the real world and comparing notes?
From what I'm seeing worldwide on our channels, it's very, very, very quiet.
Hmm?
And it's unusually quiet.
Do
And
you think it's
that's
the lull before the storm?
don't know. From Indonesia, from Australia, where else we've got channels? Spain, Latin America. It Our channels have been dead.
Hmm?
5 messages a week it's dropped to, and it's like, that's crazy.
Yep. And it's something I'm kind of seeing as well in the various groups that I'm in. That there's a lot of banter going on and a lot of chat, but very little in the way of actual newsy type things that are happening. And I was even checking out before we started the call today. I thought I'll just take a look at what's in the news. Um, and there isn't that much. If you take a look at there's the point about Standard Charter saying XRP soaring 500%. We're always going to get this kind of thing where companies are going to make predictions which are quite extreme just because it gives them column inches and newspapers and that. Then you get the whole thing about, SEC signals massive crypto trading shakeup. Well, let's take a look at that maybe and see what the SEC's latest is. Yeah, sometimes when you see words like that, it's a precursor to they're about to do something a little bit more radical in some way. So the fact that they're talking about changing policy and regulation and this kind of thing might be an indication that they're kind of like firing a shot across the bow of something that they're thinking of. Or equally, it could just be that the acting SAC chair is expressing an opinion. We shall see. So I think you're right, Stuart. It's quite a quiet week crypto wise, and you can kind of see it from the news items as well, where I find whenever crypto channels start talking about what could be about to happen with the markets and prices could go up or could go down and price predictions, and they're not actually talking about any innovation and things happening or any actual announcements. Yeah, that does tend to mean that there's not a lot happening. We shall see. So maybe Ken, coming back to actually the underlying technology as opposed to crypto prices, are you hearing anything happening at the moment? I know it was Paris Blockchain Week last week, wasn't it? I don't know if you've heard anything coming out of that or any Ethereum events or anything of late.
Yeah, I mean, Ethereum Research Group had a basically a big meeting, but because they do these once a month, they do it online. But apparently, quite a few people were on the meeting who were at Paris.
Mhm.
But nothing really technology-wise new came out of that. It was just more kind of bickering between individuals, and uh, Trump's situation basically has been driving everything because on one end you've got people saying, well, this is good for Ethereum because it means that we're building the new rails of the financial system. And then you also get the other half who just shouting about liquidity being down. But technically, it was just it's just mostly it was just like research proposals. There was nothing concrete, nothing new came out. Basically, it's
Okay.
as these things go. Usually, they just people come and just talk about what they're working on until you have like an upgrade. That's usually when something big happens. But generally, it's just very tiny, small, incremental things that happen.
You know, I was just taking a look at the recent checkpoints. So they do like a developer checkpoints each week, and exactly as you say, there doesn't seem to be anything major coming out. So, what, in your opinion, was the last major upgrade to the protocol then? What was it? The switch to proof of stake was the last main thing, or have there been other interesting things happening?
I think that was the biggest thing that really, because after switch to proof of stake, a lot of the minor kind of upgrades are being to support layer twos.
Mhm.
So you had the to make them more gas efficient. I think that happened about a year and a bit ago.
Mhm.
And that was the last real thing that I think made a big difference because people could basically see it in their transaction fees. Um, but at the moment, nothing really solid has come out.
Okay, because I thought this was
But
something.
the
Was this something
just
you were looking
talking,
at around sharding differently and getting
yeah. But I was
feasible?
just saying, the major thing at the moment as well. It's not really Ethereum. It's to do with I say Solana with their Fire Dancer that came out a while back. So they claim to be kind of the fastest. Well, I mean, these claims have been done before, but I think theirs is probably correct because it's not really decentralized. It's a centralized entity, so you can have really quick transactions around them. But Fire Dancer is their latest output, and people have been shouting about it, but we'll see whether that makes any difference really. Because if you're a trader, it should make a difference because it's basically about the speed of finality. You know, how quick can you get your trade in and complete your trade? Um, so that's what Solana seems to be really focused on. And the funny thing is, the people who came out with it aren't even Solana. I think they're like a trading entity who just want to make it really quick so they can do their trades. Kind of like the people who came out with DeepSeek. I mean, I'm not sure, but I have heard that the actual company that came out with DeepSeek are actually a trading arm, and they just wanted something more efficient. So
Yes, that's correct. They built it for themselves. They're a trading arm in Hangzhou, and when it first came out, I had one of my staff go over there and talk to their CEO, and they've been using it for about 6 months.
yeah, I mean, yeah. So that's that Solana thing. It's a good experiment to see what's happening. I mean, at the moment, most of the people there, I think, on Solana just, I mean, in my opinion, I'd say 90% of their volume is just meme coins. So
Hmm.
we'll have to wait and see how that pans out. But that for me at the moment, that's the most exciting thing is the speed that they're getting. But like I say, the biggest weakness is it's a centralized entity.
Well, this is what I noticed there was an announcement today um, about a new capability, Solaxy, which to me sounds a bit like a laxative product. But no criticism too. But it's a layer 2 project, and they're going in through an ICO, but describing itself as a next gen layer 2 solution. I'm still of the argument that if you have to introduce a layer 2 solution, that means that you've got a problem with your layer 1s.
Layer 1 failed.
Yeah. Well, I think that did they launch their ICO yesterday or something? So, yeah, interesting. Yeah, I'm always interested by these names of these products and that, and having worked in the pharmaceutical industry at one point, anything that ends axy tends to have certain connections. So, oh well, an interesting adjunct. Anything else going on then, or is it really that dead? Is there anything else we can talk about this week?
I'm curious because there is such a thing called layer 0. Does that mean most people use third-party layer 0 and layer 1, and then they develop their own layer 2? Is that how it works?
I'm going to hold my hand up before anyone asks me to explain this and say I don't know the difference between layer 0 and layer 1. So who'd like to pitch in there? I know we've got people who know this stuff better than me.
Well, layer 0, in my understanding, is just to make it more interoperable. So with layer 0, you should have the ability to move your tokens between different blockchains extremely easily, because your layer 1 is your blockchain. Then you can have your layer 0, which should allow you to very easily, without having any bridge really, move your token between one blockchain to the other, relying on the layer 0 technology. That's my thinking of the layer 0.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a bit. Yeah, that's
sorry,
correct.
Sorry, go on.
There's a big problem when you're moving coin between networks, and that is if you move the coin from network A to network B. If network B doesn't reach finality, you've then got to unwind everything back to chain A. And that's the biggest problem you have, because then you have an incredible slowdown. So I'm not really sure what layer 0 buys you, to be honest. It's really a layer 2 that's skinnied down.
Yeah. And this is the thing that I'm always nervous about, definitions and that. And so I just thought pull up Cointelegraph did what's a layer 0 blockchain. And it says about, as soon as it starts saying about creating custom blockchains that can be tailored, I always start thinking, does that just mean that you're doing a fork, or does it mean that you're expecting to interoperate with layer 1, in which case it's kind of, as Stuart say, is a skinny layer 2 solution. So
yeah, I think I'd agree with that, because layer 0 handles all the security and everything, and you build your blockchain using their security. It's like Stuart said, it really does mimic the layer 2. So you issue your blockchain token, somebody else builds their own blockchain, let's say, to focus on whatever they want to focus on. They issue their token. And if I'm then using token A, I should then be able to move my token to token B very seamlessly without having to have a bridge, which is how I'd probably move from, from Ethereum to another blockchain, to Bitcoin. So you have those wrapped Bitcoin or wrapped Ethereum and so forth when you're moving, let's say, from easiest one to really think of is from, let's say, you're moving from Ethereum to BNB, to the Binance chain. You need to have a bridge. Somebody has to be in the middle to take hold of the token and give you a wrapped version of that token on the other end. And then when you want to move back, you then go to that middleman, give them that wrap token, and then they unwrap it and issue it on the other side, the layer one. But with layer 0, you shouldn't have that issue. All the blockchains built on layer 0 you should be able just to natively move your token around.
Okay, so the way I'm kind of interpreting all of that and reading this article is layer 0 is an interoperability layer. Layer 1 is your native blockchain, and then layer 2 is an off-blockchain solution. Is that a reasonable thing? Because I noticed, Cosmos and Polkadot are described as layer 0s, and I think of them as an interoperability layer. Well, I'm happy to have people with different viewpoints on this.
Yes, I'm happy with that definition. Yes, it is about interoperability. So if different people develop their own level 0, I'm then curious as to whether they are still interoperable among themselves. Because obviously they probably does not want to use the third party like Polkadot. Mm-hmm. And if they build their own layer 0, how does the bridge actually happens, and do they still need to use a third party component like Polkadot in order to connect?
Yeah. I am not that technical.
Yes,
so I can, yeah.
The layer 0 handles it, so you don't need a bridge because it's interoperable, but you have to be on the same layer 0. So you can't be on a different layer 0. And then
so it's an interoperable capability.
Yeah,
correct.
So yeah.
It's almost like you write IBM writes software, and unfortunately, no one else writes anything like it. So now you have to have an API, and no, it as Ken said, it's an interoperable that isn't interoperable because there's no standards there.
Okay. A non-interoperable interoperability standard. Great. It's time I take up a new.
It's really a layer 2
or something.
It's a layer 2 without the bells and whistles.
Yep. Yeah, that's it. And JT's joined us as well. Maybe he'll have a view. JT, we're just talking. It seems to be a really quiet week in crypto this week. There isn't that much. We're seeing the reflection of a lot of potential US government type activity and attitudes with Trump and with the prospects of tariffs and so on, potentially shaking the market. But it seems to have been a quiet week news-wise. So we're just drifting into the world of layer 0, layer 1 and layer 2 blockchains and discussing the merits and differences between them. I don't know, have you heard anything actually worth sharing? Because usually you wait until the last 5 minutes and come up with half a dozen brilliant things. So there's a chance if you've heard anything. If you're in Paris or anything, do feel free to share.
Not that I recall of, there's, you're right, it was all focused on Trump and tariffs and all of that.
You're coming through very weakly at the moment.
Yeah, I said it's been quite quiet. Yeah, It's mainly Trump tariffs and all that stuff.
I kind of feel a bit better now because I thought it was just me missing out on stuff, but it does seem to have been a genuinely quiet week. So Annie, I guess coming back to your thing, really, on the layer 0 and layer 1, layer 2, and that. I don't know. Did we kind of answer what you were asking?
I'm still here. Yeah, I to me, it's like, if people, do not have a standard on a baseline, and they all want to develop their own thing, I'm kind of curious as to, if as a consumer, you wanted to be able to communicate with something, and everybody has their own foundation, because that's how people likes to do things, their own territory, if you like. And then, I'm kind of curious as to how that really works out, in real life, in reality.
I think it's interesting because I always use the analogy when you're talking about blockchains and interoperability of DVDs, VHS, Betamax, and SCART sockets. So I always say that SCART sockets were the interoperability layer between the device recorder stroke player and the visualization. So SCART socket, for those who don't know what they are, thing on the back of the TV set that you could plug into with different devices. So whether it was a DVD player, a VHS, Philips 2000 or Betamax, it operated that ability to be interoperable with all of them. But what we're now kind of needing with, by the sound of it, layer zero blockchain solutions is a kind of a SCART to SCART connector. So it's a bit like how you see those devices of like USB 2 to USB 3 or RS-232 for those who remember it and whatever. You kind of need something like that in the blockchain world. And that sounds like it's something we're not really seeing. Because you got this whole thing, as was mentioned earlier on, about not just the interoperability, but you need a thing called atomic consistency. So if you've got something that is worth 1 unit of whatever on one blockchain, it needs to kind of like maintain its value when you transfer it to another blockchain.
Why?
Well,
Why?
because you would hope that if I bought a Gary coin on Solana, that it would be worth the same amount.
Let's take a gallon of milk.
Mm-hmm.
You go out and you buy it with so many sol, or fractions of a sol, whatever they're called. And I'm on Ethereum, so I'm going to pay with ETH.
Mm-hmm.
That transaction interchange is never going to happen without a layer 2 in position. And layer 2 is going to skim it, and you're no better off than a bank.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have interoperability between any of the layer 1 blockchains out there now, period. And it's not going to happen. They've locked themselves into smart contracts. Smart contracts are dumb contracts. And that's what we've done with our chain is we've tried to make everything an asset so that you have a value assigned to it. That value then can be put up against a table if you wish, and this many ETH, this many SOL, and so on and so forth. So that's really the only way to do it, because you've got so much fluctuation in the way that the networks are run. And you see that on pricing with Ethereum especially. So the idea is to have a stable processing fee, because if you don't, how the heck can you know what your translation is? So if I send you something at 10 o'clock in the evening on ETH to your Solana, it's going to be a different cost and have a different value, and different value to me and to you. I can make it the same to you as if I sent it at 9:30 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Because the gas fees are going to vary tremendously. So you're never going to get that interoperability with a stable currency value into fiat or into anything while you've got this fluctuation and the way that the networks are designed. They've pasted themselves into a corner.
So do you think that's just a general issue then whenever you've got kind of, it's not on-chain and off-chain ramps, it's kind of like inter-chain connectivity that, if you're doing ETH to ETH, you've got that true atomicity. But if you're doing ETH to Solana,
you haven't, depending on time. It's time of day dependent. It's traffic dependent. So you cannot tell me how much gas you'll pay on a specific ETH transaction.
Yeah, and it was interesting as well because there was some mention about we were talking about proof of stake earlier on, and the impact that was going to have on gas fees. And I was kind of curious because I actually took a look at what had happened with gas fees, and just pulled it up here. So this is the Ethereum average gas price chart. Obviously, it fluctuates on within certain days, but we can see that whilst the gas fees were, going really high in 2021, 2022, seemed to be where there was a massive growth of NFTs and
Yeah.
smart contracts against them there. And then it kind of settled down. Once it got to, I can't remember when proof of stake went live, but we can certainly see a drop in gas fees, but not
But
stability.
it's not level.
Mm.
It's not level. I mean,
I was
change
just
the
gonna
scale
say-
and it looks terrible.
I was just going to say that the gas fees always go down when we're in a bear market. The real test about the proof of work gas fees is going to be when we hit the next bull market.
On what date is that again?
Whenever that happens, and we have that
agree.
long period, that's when we can test did that experiment work? Because in bear markets, gas fees are always low.
So all we need is a bull and bear market indicator to give us a clue.
Yeah, but the thing about, just to mention about each blockchain, about the value moving from one blockchain to another blockchain, each blockchain is like its own country that issues its own currency. So it's just like if you're, because I transact a lot between the pound and the euro, and I notice, I don't have to basically see, watch the news or pick up the paper to see that there's been a change in the exchange rate. I just have to go to make an exchange because I need to make a payment. I pull up the app and I just notice a difference straight away because I'm making these payments so often between, either way. And for me, a change, small change makes a big difference. I definitely notice the changes and so forth. And that's how I view each blockchain. Each blockchain is its own kind of like current country that issues its own currency. And we'll see. Because if we go back to the pint of milk, if I buy my pint of milk in, let's say, the UK in pounds, and then I go into Europe and I've got euros, my pint of milk is always going to the cost is going to be different because I'm now dealing in a different currency. I think it's going to be very hard to bridge that gap simply because you're going to have speculators in there who are always going to be able to make a living kind of playing the arbitrage.
There's always going to be arbitrage. That's what you've got with currencies. What you're looking at is not turning it into fiat, but for example, I'm a manufacturer and I'm in the US, and I'm dealing with this rich guy called Ken who's got properties in Spain that he's funding every month. And he's just ordered a special window shutter made out of California. I can quote you that in a currency that's a blockchain currency. And when it gets there, you know exactly the currency it will be in. The problem that we have at the moment in doing that is I don't know what my gas fee is going to be. So I have to add on enough to cover me. And you look at it and say, that's expensive. Could I get it cheaper from the Nuttall Corporation in England? And he may not have as much gas fee as I do because he's working at a time when the US is asleep and therefore traffic is low. And, he can undercut me by so many gwei or whatever the currency is. So there's that. And you're correct in saying that these are sovereign currencies, essentially. Each blockchain is a sovereign currency.
I guess the other thing, building on that, because it's quite a nice analogy there, is it was curious, Stuart. You were mentioning gallons of milk before. Well, we've got the other
Oh, sorry,
interoperability
you're
challenge.
liters, aren't you? Sorry.
No, well, this is where it gets curious. That even if we stay with gallons, US gallons and imperial gallons are different.
Absolutely, yeah.
As pilots have discovered to their cost before now.
So are tons as well.
Yeah. But it shows the whole issue of interoperability again, that in order to do that, you need standards in some way, and you need standard terms and standard definitions. So I found that quite amusing. And the fact that, actually, I don't think in the UK you can buy pints of milk anymore. You actually buy half litres or litres, if I remember correctly. But yeah, the principle certainly applies.
God, you're losing your sovereignty.
I'm losing my marbles.
Yes.
One thing I did find interesting though, because again, what we're talking about there is converting, and buying things in crypto that is volatile and that. There was an interesting news item in the UK, and it probably hasn't made it to the States, but I'll share it here. And it's that there is a Scottish boarding school in the UK, which is now accepting Bitcoin for school fee payments, which I thought.
And who's setting the rate? They are.
Well, that's a different thing. But it is actually looking to work with FCA registered providers. So there aren't that many of them in the UK, but certainly it mentions CoinCover and that kind of thing. Well, I thought it was interesting that they at least announced that. Now, whether they're truly accepting Bitcoin directly or whether they're routing it via a provider, I don't know. But it's always nice when you at least see something like that in the news and you think, oh, okay, that's kind of an interesting one. So.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting because a lot of companies who say they accept that crypto, Bitcoin, whatever, will use something like Coinbase Pay or whatever, e-commerce Coinbase, which effectively takes the crypto, converts it immediately to fiat for them. So on their side, they're actually really just accepting fiat.
Yeah. Unless it's
10 years.
Go on,
I was going to say, 10 years from now, that could have been an awfully expensive education, or it could be a very cheap education.
Yep. Maybe we'll have not just Bitcoin Pizza Day, but in a few years' time, it'll be boarding school day in some way. Maybe exactly. If crypto goes in a certain direction, then a lot more people will be able to afford boarding school or not. We'll see on that. Yeah, we'll see what comes up. Just joined Nathan. I see you just joined us a little bit late in the day. How are you today, Nathan?
I'm fine. I'm about to go out with my grandchildren, so I'm in the same age group, gentlemen, ladies, whoever's there. It's just something. I'm a novice, but I've been enjoying the Cambridge group and all the various things that go on in there, the shenanigans, and there's a lot of very smart people. So I thought I'd come along for the ride, and I do have a blockchain project, yes.
Oh. But, well, whereabouts are you actually based then, Nathan?
I'm a nomad. I have been for most of my 74 years. I live right now in Miami at the moment I'm with my daughter and two beautiful grandchildren, and I have a very sick, brain injured wife. We live in France where our son lives, UK sometimes, Paris and the Loire Valley, and Australia, which is a home, but not much anymore.
Okay, so definitely a digital nomad then.
Yes. No, well, not a digital nomad per se.
A nomad.
I prefer, we're trying to actually, one of the things we're trying to do is build a proper new nomad network for the young people who can't afford to buy houses anymore because they can't. And so the idea is to hopefully over time develop a network of individually owned properties that share values and will allow various people to come and stay for not a week, but a month or 2 months or whatever. That's a goal, long-term goal, and my children share it. So hopefully it'll happen.
Oh, cool.
So Nathan, a question for you. Does that mean that you are actually doing Bitcoin company on real estate?
Well, I'm hoping to, Annie. The real estate's a bit complicated in Australia. I have some friends who have a very, very big project, which is normal at the moment, but there is one part of it which will probably become blockchainable because it's on some land which cannot be built on, but it can have a sculpture trail, for example. So we'll probably fractionalize and tokenize that part. The whole project, it's like a $1 billion project, so they're very cautious people. In Australia, in order to do anything like that, you need what's called a financial services license. So my friends have that, so they could do it. There's another project I'm investigating at the moment, which is a very famous, now deceased Australian artist called Martin Sharp. He was a very important pop artist in the 60s and 70s. And his house belongs to the charitable trust he set up, and it's worth 40 million Australian dollars. And I'm trying to convince them to tokenize and fractionalize the ownership of it so that it doesn't get torn down and developed, which is the alternative. So apparently the Australian authorities look at it on a case-by-case basis. So if you're doing anything which they would like to call a management investment scheme, that's thus securities, then you must have a license and go through lots of rubbish, or well, not rubbish, proper stuff. But if it's not, if you can convince them that the primary reason for doing this is for some better good, which is the case in this case, we are wanting to have a lot more people participate in a cultural program effectively. That apparently is least possible, and so we're going to explore it. I don't know the answer though. Anyone who's got any suggestions, I'm very, very happy to listen.
Thank you, Nathan, for that. I'm curious. So based on what I asked, the question I asked earlier, which obviously you weren't there, I'm curious then, do you build your blockchain from ground zero, or are you using some third-party provider and build on top of it?
Well, I'm not building anything. At the moment, I have a blockchain project which is artistic in nature, and that's using ordinals. So we're using the Bitcoin blockchain because it's the most high level. It costs more, but I believe it's the most secure. And if people like to use the word immutable, I don't know that it's correct for any blockchain, but this is the nearest that I've seen so far. So I'm convinced so far we're working with the Ordinals bot team, who've been very, very helpful. And we are launching an ambitious project which involves an important work of art by Georges Braque, a famous French painter, which I own. So we're putting real-world assets is the main game, whether it's real estate or paintings or musical instruments. I own a valuable cello that's going to be definitely fractionalized and put on the chain. So I don't think there's any need for me to spend money building platforms, and when there's some plenty good ones out there. I think Solana is probably very good for low price and easy transactions, and Bitcoin blockchain for the more prestigious high value things. That's my current view, but I'm a novice. You guys all know much more than I do.
No, but you're in it. So that is why I thought, you obviously has an idea about, what you are wanting to build and how to build it, quite obviously, if you're in it, right? That is how I see it.
Maybe you don't know me well, Annie. I'm one of these people who's been a serial entrepreneur all my life. So I take risks, but I take calculated risks. In this case, I'm not risking a lot of money. I'm risking my reputation if I make a mistake. But I think so far what we're doing is the opposite. I think you probably know in the art world, there's a lot of opacity. And so if we can try to lift the veil, that's going to be a good thing for everybody. So that's our main motivation, is authenticity, provenance, transparency, lower fees. There's a lot of things which are clearly valuable in the real world asset space. And whether it's going to be appropriate in the bigger world like real estate, I think there'll be other people who are going to make that decision, not me. Are you in that space yourself?
Do you mean me?
Yes.
Yeah, probably it's a company that is a competitor to yours. I don't know, but it sounds like it. It sounds like it. But yeah. So
Well,
I am in that space myself, yes.
I hope that there are plenty of competitors. I would like to see real world assets of all kinds being put on chain, because that's the good place. When you want security, provenance, authenticity, transparency, blockchain's the way to go, for sure. Just most people are still scared. what I've found with people of my age group and a lot of people that I know who have never been in this world, they are not so afraid of blockchain. They're afraid of Bitcoin, crypto. They don't like crypto. They're scared about it. They're not sure that it's safe. They're not sure about money laundering. They're not sure about theft. And so I always say the same thing. Bitcoin cannot exist without the blockchain. The blockchain can exist without Bitcoin. That's very simple.
Yes, that is correct. I agree with that. So Nathan, are you only focusing in Australia, or because you
No,
mentioned quite a few countries? So or how what is
not
your
Australia.
intention?
No,
Not
not based
Australia.
in Australia. No, I won't do anything based in Australia because the legal authorities and the financial authorities are very, very strict. So I'll probably look for a more friendly jurisdiction. But the international rules will eventually be made. Essentially, I believe that you can fractionalize and tokenize most things without too much trouble. If it's deemed to be a security, then different countries have different rules. But I'm not interested in trading. I know a lot of people, certainly on the Cambridge group, are traders. I'm not a trader. Our little business is called Octar, OCTARR.com, and it's called Redefining Collectibles. That's what we're trying to do. We want people to think about collectibles, traditional ones and maybe not such traditional ones, using the blockchain as powerful technology and also to enable more people to participate. That's the real goal, is to have a lot more people who don't have a lot of money joining in and having fun with things which do have high value in a transparent way. Some people will want to make money out of it, but like I think you've all seen a lot of this, that if the people who I think they're called maxis, the early Bitcoin adopters who stayed, they're making a lot of money now, or they're very rich now. Yeah, in 2 minutes, okay? I've got to go. Sorry. I'll try to plan next week. Okay, guys? My children are calling me. But if anyone,
enjoy your
come back and
Sunday.
join us.
please
enjoy.
DM me if you want to, Annie, to continue the discussion. Okay?
Yes.
Easy
We
to
should
find.
connect. We should
And
connect.
if you look at my name there, it's very easy to see on the internet. I'm only one person with my name. I'm a musician and a winemaker. So that's what I'm known for, but I'm having fun with the other things. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I have to go now.
Okay, great.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye. Well, I'm glad I've asked my questions.
That's good. And
That's gone.
for those who didn't capture Nathan's details, let's just pop them up here, because he is right. He's pretty easy to Google, and he is a musician and former head cellist at Sydney Symphony Orchestra. So there we go. An interesting guy. Hopefully he'll come and join us again at a future session, particularly when he's talking about things about using crypto, but with ordinals for real estate, kind of a variation. So there's kind
ordinals for real estate.
Well,
yeah, okay.
It's interesting that it depends how you use it. If you use it as a asset register, I think it works. I think your challenge is when you start trying to use it as an ownership register. So I've seen some projects where you use ordinals simply as a register of assets, but not necessarily as the ownership of the ownership of assets. So
define the two, Gary. There's a very fine line there.
Well, I'm going to leave it for Nathan when he rejoins us to talk through what they're doing, rather than me trying.
Yeah, it sounds like a timeshare by any other name.
Yeah, the thing though with ordinal projects is we did have a lot of them during the bear market coming up, but ever since Bitcoin
They're dead.
went up, very few of them have popped up. So, but yes, I mean, it's interesting with these ordinal projects. I mean, the technology is a bit, I'd say, still needs a lot of work on it.
And for those who aren't aware, an ordinal is basically, if you think about the Bitcoin blockchain, which tracks Bitcoin, and a Bitcoin can be sliced up into 100 million, what are known as sats, then for that record, for the individual sat, there is a block of space left on it. And so what some ordinals projects do is they use that space to record something. And so it might be like an asset ownership, a person, or a message, or it might be a link to an NFT or whatever. But it means that you're actually holding the information on the Bitcoin blockchain, which is generally considered to be pretty secure compared to some of the others. But it can be quite expensive, which is kind of problem, because if you're trying to process a transaction against a single sat, that is going to be on the Bitcoin network quite expensive to process in terms of the fees and that. So yeah, there are some successes. I know Toby, who runs a Bitcoin Ordinals project, he's been doing a lot of stuff in that area. Maybe we'll get him to come and talk about it one day. But yeah, it's an interesting idea. We shall see. Well, look, folks, we're getting towards the end of the call. We've got 3 minutes left, which is usually where JT then says, "Oh, has anyone heard about this?" and then talks about this fundamentally fascinating thing. But I don't think he's going to this week, are you, JT? No, he's gone off to have his tea. So what I'm going to do then is that, unless anyone's got anything to add, I'm going to wrap the call up for this week. That's good with everyone. And as always, I'm going to say thank you, everyone, for the participation. It was an interesting journey, that, really. We started with Fear and Greed Index and the general market and the Trump effect, I think, as it's now being known. And then we've ended up on ordinals. So quite a variety with some stuff in between. So as always, thank you everyone for joining. Much appreciated. Hopefully see you next week. For those who are watching online, stop watching online and come and join the call. We hold these every week, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. UK time, and everyone's welcome, no matter where in the world you are. So if it's really early in Australia or lunchtime in the States, come and join us. Anyway, folks, thanks as always. Have a great day, afternoon, morning, or evening. Cheers now.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.